Hi there. Good morning to everybody, and I hope all of you are doing safe. Thanks so much for tuning into the trade setup right here on BloombergQuint Live. It's an interesting day of trade. It's the penultimate day to the expiry, and therefore the next couple of days, depending on the rolls that have happened thus far, and I'll speak a bit about that. You might have some fairly interesting movements, if not on the headline indices, then within the headline indices. So that's something that all of us have to keep in mind. But first, what the US market, by the way, the vaccination drive kickstarts from today, right? So all of us have to register. Everybody below 45 have to register. I think the registration is not on as of now because I tried and you can't register unless you're 45 years. So maybe it begins from 4 p.m. That's what I heard. A lot of other, that's what I saw on social media and some of the handles. So maybe that is the case that post 4 p.m. we'll be able to register. But yeah, if that is the case, please go out and register yourself. If possible, take the appointments and let's try and get vaccinated as many as we can from May 1st. Okay, what is it that the markets are doing? The US market should first come up on your screen. And you would have to say ho-hum, really, nothing kind of a performance. And it is as per script, right? We spoke about this yesterday that it's very unlikely that ahead of the Fed meet, even though it's supposed to be a non-event of sorts, that the markets will have a big gyration either direction. So they were quiet yesterday. As of now, the pre-market is looking very, very quiet. So no big moves in the US side. And I think that's percolating into the rest of the Asian screen as well, because you're seeing Asia having a fairly flattish kind of a move. Some markets margin in the green, some markets in the red, but it's a fairly flattish move. And I'll be really, really surprised if the SGX Nifty and the Nifty itself has some major gyrations. Sure, you can have a bit of volatility intraday. And I think maybe the SGX also went through that, but you're flattish to a marginally positive start on open, and therefore it remains very, very stock specific. Remember, the FOMC meet, which concludes today, remains the key thing to watch out for from a global markets perspective. Yes, within that, we'll have results, individual stocks moving up and down. Tesla, for example, I think after hours has come off, and all of that will happen. But the FOMC meet and what Jerome Powell and team have to say remains the key variable from a near-term trade perspective. So that is something that all of us watch out for. We watch out for results today, not as much on the Nifty really, even in the broader market space, the stocks, companies that are coming out of the results, and ones which really matter and not really matter perspective, but ones which might move around a bit based on liquidity, etc. Very few. So on the index, we have FinServ, and the non-index side, amongst the ones that are coming out the results, the ones that I thought were key ones were Biocon, KPIT, a management that we'll speak to tomorrow on Talking Point, as well as Tata Communications could be interesting. And then there are some small ones as well. But from amongst the more liquid ones, I thought these are the ones that should be pointed out. So do watch out for these. But stocks that will react today, and I'll spend some time, which is why I've moved pretty quickly, stocks that will react today would be very, very interesting. Now, let's start off with Axis Bank. I'm not mentioning Bajaj Finance out here because Bajaj Finance numbers that have come out have largely been in line. Almost all houses that I saw have an accumulate rating. So Bajaj Finance numbers have not really been, how do I say, the ones which will probably move the needle on the stock too much. So the numbers have come out, but they're largely in line. The guidance or whatever the commentary that has come in the call is largely in line, and therefore all brokerages are largely benign on Bajaj Finance. It's a quality franchise. If the economy bounces back, this one will, but the results themselves don't really do too much. On Axis, let's just sorry. Just before we get to Axis Bank, excuse me, I apologize to my producer. I haven't quite given up the trade setup, have I? No, I haven't. Let's just very quickly look at the trade setup. So, excuse me for this. The good part about yesterday's session was that all sectors ended in the green: metals, capital goods, consumer durables. And I think when I looked at the technical parlance, most people said that the Nifty has been forming higher highs and higher lows in the last 3 sessions, which actually augurs well for the market. Somehow I think that the risk reward is not as favorable for an immediate trading long position as it was last Thursday, when I had said that, it just looked very evident from a risk reward perspective that one should go long. So it's kind of 50-50 to my mind, not completely in the green zone, I think, but it's important to see that. And I think just by virtue of the kind of movement that we've seen yesterday, or we could see in the near term, specialty chemicals and pharma remain firmly in focus. Pharma made a bit of a big comeback in trade yesterday, and therefore interesting to see what happens there. But specialty chemicals, huge move. any stock from a Heikel to an alkyl amines, Balaji amines, all of these are a fabulous move, large, mid, small, everything moved. And therefore, specialty chemicals should certainly be a space you monitor. We haven't had too many results come out thus far from that pocket, and it'll be interesting to see what these companies have to say about Q4 and about Q1. Remember, the base effect kind of comes into play for most of these companies as well, and their operations remain largely uninterrupted. Okay, on to stocks to monitor today. So Axis Bank remains one. I spoke about how Bajaj Finance, I don't want to talk too much about it because it was on expected lines. Axis is interesting because the numbers were above estimates on most counts. Now, that is something all of you know, and therefore I'm bringing you what you should know. So CLSA, for example, one of the brokerages, they've increased the target price to 1,025. They expect the re-rating to continue. They say that Axis Bank remains one of their top picks. There's a very strong base for profitability improvement for FY22 year. They expect the stock to deliver a 16 or bank to deliver a 16 to 17% core PPOP CAGR or FY21 to 23. And FY21 performance, according to them, has been reassuring on the quality of incremental underwriting. So CLSA believes Axis Bank is, by virtue of these results, is good enough for them to increase the target price. Not everybody does that, by the way. MK is saying that they are happy with the results, but they have maintained the target price. So it's different for different brokerages, right? But largely, the numbers were better than what the Bloomberg estimates were, and that is something that probably could help the stock in the session today. Just keep in mind that it has had a bit of a rally after ICICI Bank's numbers came out. So if you expect an ICICI Bank-like reaction, maybe not. But also keep in mind that Axis Bank didn't have the kind of expectations that people had from ICICI. Broadly, ICICI is the new growth leader, so to say, and all of that. So many brokerages say. So that might help the stock do a little bit better than what otherwise it would have if it had already done a pre-rally. If ICICI Bank had already rallied 4-5% ahead of the numbers, it may not have shown that 5% incremental move. In Axis cases, it might be slightly different. So let's wait and watch what happens here. Tbs Motors is the other one. I mean, they came out with a stellar margin performance, you have to admit. But the overall numbers, revenues, 53% higher, led by about a 46.5% increase in volumes. And realizations were just about 4.3%. So very, very interesting that they saw such a splendid volume growth. Why? Of course, there's a base effect into play, but still good volume numbers. EBITDA up 119% and margins were up about 304 basis points to about 10.1%. Now, again, out here, it's interesting. Look at, again, I've chosen CLSA because they laid out some points very beautifully. What they have to say about TBS Motors is interesting. They are of course, rating is outperformed. The target price is 665. They're saying that it's a strong beat in a difficult quarter. And the pricing and mix will offset the commodity cost push for TBS, according to them. And they have increased the FY22 to 23 EPS estimates by 13 to 15%. The key is what they're saying, that they believe that the stock can continue to trade at a premium to Bajaj and Hero. I think TBS trades at some 30-40% premium, maybe more than Bajaj or Hero. But they believe that this can continue because of market share gains, higher EPS growth, and improving free cash flow conversion. So a stock trading at a premium comes out with a very good set of numbers and could do well in the session today. So do watch out for TVS Motors as well. The numbers from the others, so the AMC companies or Syngene or ABB, all of these seem largely in line with estimates. So pretty ho-hum. In fact, in Syngene's case, the guidance was probably a bit not up to the mark. Let's wait and watch. It's a company which trades at extremely high valuations because the market expects it to perform really well. Will the street be disappointed with that? Maybe so. You will hear from the management today, by the way, if you want to. So you can tune in, I think, at 10:30 or 11 or at 1:30 p.m. India time, if I'm not wrong. 1:30 p.m. India time, we'll be speaking to Syngene. So you may want to tune in for that conversation. Let's wait and watch what happens there. Last but not the least, something that could be interesting is InfoEdge. Now, the reason why I bring this up is because the board has approved participating in an OFS in Zomato's IPO, and they've approved raising up to 750 crores via the OFS. Now, there are two things out here, viewers. What this does, viewers, is that it gives us a sight that there is an IPO from Zomato that is coming up. So that is part one. And part two is that we do not know what's the extent of valuation, what's the valuation that the board has approved that Zomato IPO will be coming out with. So what this does is that we know that there's a Zomato IPO, that InfoEdge will raise 750 crores. But will this happen at a valuation of $5 billion, $6 billion, or $7 billion of overall valuation of Zomato? That we don't know. I think if the IPO happens at a higher valuation, that is a big trigger for InfoEdge as a stock, because as of now, the pre-IPO placements were done at a valuation of about 5 billion. So remember, the thing to keep in mind when it comes to InfoEdge is that when you see Zomato's DRHP, or when you see some notes around Zomato, and if it mentions that the IPO of Zomato is happening at a price or a valuation of northwards of $6.5 billion, that's an incremental positive. If it says that it's happening at 5.5, then it's actually a negative, or it may be in the price. So keep that in mind. If it happens at 6.5, or somewhere around that, then actually that's a big positive for InfoEdge. So you got to keep that in mind. However, I do think that because of this announcement, merely announcement, there could be a bit of a, how do I say, a move for InfoEdge too. You never know. If it does, you know why it's happening. So that's the set of stocks that you got to keep in mind, the market parlance that I think you got to keep in mind. The global markets may remain flattish and sideways, so don't expect too much more on the Nifty. Within the Nifty, individual pockets would be very, very interesting. Watch out for specialty chemicals. Big day yesterday. Let's see how they do today. Thanks so much for tuning in today. Have a safe day ahead. Stay masked and register for vaccination if you are eligible.